Hello and welcome to my garage. This is episode 20 of a series on restoring this MG Midget. Now here's one of the things I've found is on TV shows, they can tear these cars apart in a matter of days and put them all back together, and it probably takes them maybe a week, maybe a month. But it is a much longer process than that. I've kind of learned you better be in love with the process as much as you are the car. So last episode, I cut a big section of the floor out, but in this episode, it's kind of some tedious work of cleaning everything up, preparing all the rails and all the pieces in order to put the floor back on. So let's jump into this episode. So one of the first things I did was go ahead and cut this rail, this support rail, and I'm gonna obviously have to weld a new one in, but I've cut that off, got it all squared and cleaned up. I've gone along and ground off all the spot welds on this rail. I've been working on grinding off all these, and I'm not completely satisfied with where I am on it, but then the other thing that I've been working on is I had some tear outs like this one that I still had to fix, but there was a big one right here. And so I squared it off. I actually used a piece from the floor that I cut out and made a little patch for it, welded it in and ground it down. So right now I've got to get this one fixed and this one, can't tell, but there's a big tear out right here. So I'm gonna square it off and put a new piece in. And then this tab right here is cracked, but I think if I grind it down, I might be able to just tack it back together and not have to put a patch in there. I also still have to deal with this bolt that I've got to get out. So a lot of work that's got to be done in order before you put the floor in. Okay, so I have these couple of spots fixed. The one is right here. I just squared it off, put a little piece in, welded it together. This one that was busted out, I just decided to stitch it back together and just not have to patch a piece in there. And I think it'll work. And this one, I just welded it back together where it had split and come apart. So I feel like at this point I have all the little patches and holes that I want to fix. It's just now a matter of continuing to clean out, fix the one rail, and start looking at this inner sill. Of course, I'm looking at the car upside down, but we'll just keep working. So I've been working on replacing this center rail, and I've got it cut and matched in, and I'll show you kind of how I've tried to make sure that I'm getting it in there straight so that when I go to put the inner sill in, everything matches up. So I purposely left the old inner sill in because it gives me a place to hold the one end, and then I've got it matched up. I've got a magnet holding it in there, a square, and it gives me a long straight edge to make sure that everything's in line. So here I've tried to put it across the top. So I feel like it's in there pretty straight. Now it's just a matter of getting it welded in. Okay, so I have the rail all welded in, and I feel good about it. I think what I want to work on next though is this diagonal piece that'll go straight to the floor. But in order to get that part, the distance right, I want to go ahead and put the floor on, just clamp it on so I can see what the distance is going to be, which means I'm going to have to go ahead and take this inner sill out. So there's a couple of things to consider with this inner sill. One of them is right here. You see that the it actually goes behind this vertical piece. But if you look on the inside, it goes behind, or it goes in front of the inner part. So it's behind the outer part, but it's in front of the inner part. So I want to make sure I drill all that out so I leave myself something to weld to. The other thing that I want to consider is if I clamp a straight edge to this piece and I follow it down, it ends up lining up with the bottom part of this notch in the inner sill, which is going to be important. I want to make sure that when I put the new one in, that it lines up the same way. So I want to make sure that I'm considering that for future alignment. So what I'm going to work on now is going ahead and drilling out all the spot welds to go ahead and get this inner sill removed and leaving myself enough stuff to re-weld back the new one on. I won't weld it on yet, but I'll be able to clamp it on there. And again, that'll give me an alignment for the bottom of the floor, because I don't want to put the floor on or the inner sill on until I fix that diagonal part of the footwell. So to remove this inner sill, and I have the car upside down, you can see there's some spot welds all along here. So I'm drilling those out and then coming up from the other side and getting my separator tool down in here to pop that out. So I finished up cutting out the inner sill. I tried to drill spot welds out to make sure that I still had a place to weld back on the new one, but it got to the point where I just had to use a cut-off wheel and just start cutting metal out. It's just easier that way. So let me show you where it's at right now. So here's the inner sill completely gone. You can see I was able to keep this piece that will ultimately, the new one will get attached to, and this I'll have to clean all that spot welds off. The new one will actually slide up behind this and in front of this one and get attached. I was able to keep this tab that'll ultimately eventually it'll get attached to the top of the outer sill. And I was able to keep this little spot right here that the new inner sill will slide behind and get attached there. So I've got some cleaning up to do, but I'm glad that it's out and I can move forward. So that's it for this episode. The inner sill's out, and now I can start cleaning the rest of that stuff up, cut my floor pan to the right size, start working on fixing that diagonal piece that's in the inner footwell. And I feel like pretty soon, it's still gonna take some time to clean all that up, but pretty soon we're gonna be attaching lots of new metal in. So stay with me through the whole process.